হার্ভার্ড বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের অধ্যাপক সুগত বোস পশ্চিমবঙ্গ দূষণ নিয়ন্ত্রণ পর্ষদের 50তম বর্ষ উদযাপন অনুষ্ঠানে প্রধান অতিথি হিসেবে জলবায়ু পরিবর্তন এবং পরিবেশ সংরক্ষণের বিষয়ে একটি শক্তিশালী আহ্বান জানিয়ে ছাত্র এবং বিশিষ্ট ব্যক্তিদের সম্বোধন করেন। পরিবেশগত চ্যালেঞ্জ মোকাবিলায় ভারত ও বাংলাদেশের মধ্যে সহযোগিতামূলক প্রচেষ্টার অপরিহার্যতার উপর জোর দেন। সুগত বোসের অন্তর্দৃষ্টি এই অনুষ্ঠানের তাৎপর্যের উপর জোর দিয়েছিল, যা স্টেক হোল্ডারদের এই অঞ্চলের পরিবেশগত ঐতিহ্য রক্ষায় সক্রিয় পদক্ষেপ গ্রহণের আহ্বান জানায়। ঐতিহাসিক এবং সমসাময়িক পরিবেশগত প্রেক্ষাপট উল্লেখ করে সুগত বোস নদী, জীবিকা এবং স্থায়িত্বের আন্তঃসংযোগতা তুলে ধরেন। তিনি গাঙ্গেয় বদ্বীপ ও বঙ্গোপসাগরের জটিল চ্যালেঞ্জ মোকাবিলায় উদ্ভাবনী সমাধান এবং আন্তঃসীমান্ত সহযোগিতার প্রয়োজনীয়তার উপর জোর দেন। ভবিষ্যৎ প্রজন্মের জন্য পরিবেশ সংরক্ষণের সম্মিলিত পদক্ষেপের জন্য সুগত বোসের বক্তব্যে অনুপ্রাণিত হন দর্শকরা। উদযাপনটি পশ্চিমবঙ্গের পরিবেশগত পদক্ষেপের 50 বছরের কার্যকলাপ এবং প্রতিফলনের জন্য একটি প্ল্যাটফর্ম হিসেবে কাজ করেছিল। সুগত বোসের বক্তব্য এই রাজ্যের উন্নয়ন এবং পরিবেশগত স্থিতিস্থাপকতার প্রতি নতুন করে প্রতিশ্রুতির অনুভূতি জাগিয়ে চলমান আলোচনায় গভীরতা এবং গুরুত্ব যোগ করেছে।
50 years ago, pollution control may have seemed adequate as a goal. We must now redefine our aspiration to work for climate justice. And I was very glad to hear from Srimati Roshni Sen that the main purpose of the ministry that she heads is in fact to combat global warming and climate change. We need a social movement of the young to force governments at the union level and in the states to address the pressing imperative of protecting our environment from further degradation. In discussing the geographic structures of Bengal, rivers come first. The turbulent hydrography of the great rivers has had a close bearing on our region's ecology and economy. Over the centuries, the main river has repeatedly changed course, altering the balance of the river system as a whole. The periodic breakouts were brought on by a gradual leveling of the land and the silting up of the old riverbeds. The Bhagirathi, flowing through the heart of western Bengal or Rar, had risen to preeminence during the Mughal era upon the dwindling fortunes of the Bhairav and Saraswati. Its decline paralleled that of the Mughals, and its fate was sealed once its distributary, the Damodar, awkwardly lurched southward in 1770. Since the early 17th century, the Ganga had pressed for outlets further east and found them in the Gorai in Faridpur, and more importantly, the Podda, which wove a wide swath through much of East Bengal, including Dhaka, Faridpur, and Bakharganj. The general eastward swing of the river system was in part accentuated by catalytic events in the later 18th century, as environmental upheavals paralleled or matched political ones. James Rennell, a late 18th century imperial cartographer, found the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, or the Ganges and Burhanputar, as he called them, intersecting the country of Bengal in such a way as to form the most complete and easy inland navigation that can be conceived. In most parts of the country, a navigable stream could be found within a maximum range of 25 miles. This river navigation gave constant employment to 30,000 boatmen ferrying the salt and food for 10 million people and transporting commercial exports and imports amounting to perhaps 2 million pounds sterling every year in the immediate aftermath of the British conquest of Bengal in Plassey. The boats could be as large as 180 tons, but more commonly had a capacity of 30 to 50 tons. Rennell regarded the Ganga and the Brahmaputra as twin sisters from the contiguity of their springs in the Himalayas, one moving west and the other east. They resemble each other not just in length and volume, but also the smoothness and colors of their waters. The Ganga traversed mountainous paths for 750 miles to Haridwar, where, gushing through an opening in the mountains, it flowed with a smooth, navigable stream through delightful plains to the sea, some 1,350 miles away. From a military perspective, Rennell thought it infinitely surpassed the celebrated inland navigation of North America. In its journey through the plains, it received 11 rivers, some of which were equal to the Rhine and none smaller than the Thames. The delta bordering on the sea was a labyrinth of rivers and creeks, the Sundarban. It was enveloped in woods and infested with tigers. The river and the sea, Nodi ebong Samudra, were bound in an intimate relationship. The water of the Ganga, taken at its height, contained a quarter portion of mud. No wonder then, Rennell commented, that the subsiding waters should quickly form a stratum of earth, or that the delta should encroach upon the sea. The ocean, in its turn, exercised its dominion in the winter and the monsoon in two very different ways. In the one, by the ebbing and flowing of tides, and in the other, by depressing the periodic flood, till the surface of it coincides as nearly with its own as the descent of the channel of the river will admit. The Ganga was well known to European travelers for centuries. However, the Brahmaputra was unknown in Europe as late as 1765, the year the East India Company obtained the Diwani, or the right to collect the revenue of Bengal. The twin sisters, separated at birth in westerly and easterly directions, startlingly subverted the saying that the twain shall never meet. Some 200 miles from Yunnan in southern China, the Brahmaputra hesitated. Here, it appears, Rennell wrote in 1780, as if undetermined whether to attempt a passage to the sea by the Gulf of Siam or by that of Bengal, but seemingly determining on the latter, it turns suddenly to the west through Assam and enters Bengal on the northeast. Throughout the course of 400 miles through Bengal, the Brahmaputra bore an intimate resemblance to the Ganga, except in one particular. The exception was this: for the last 60 miles before it met the Ganga, it forms a stream which is regularly from 4 to 5 miles wide, and but for the freshness might pass for an arm of the sea. It was this watery landscape that was home to the peasantry of Bengal. Contrary to the claims of Fernand Braudel and the Annales school of historians, geographic structures are not constants. The transience of the physical environment is nowhere more evident than in the deltas of great rivers. Next to earthquakes, Rennell correctly noted, perhaps the floods of the tropical rivers produced the quickest alterations in the face of our globe. What Rennell's 1780 snapshot could not capture was the steady swing of the active delta towards the east over 3 centuries. Nor could Rennell anticipate catalytic events that would change the identity of rivers. The great flood of 1787 resulted in the Tista, formerly a tributary of the Ganga, to link up with the Brahmaputra, which shifted westward to meet the Ganga near Goalondo in Dhaka, via the Jamuna. The waters of the twin sisters merged to flow into the Meghna near Chandpur in Kumilla. East Bengal's agrarian identity would henceforth be inextricably linked to the strains of the boatmen's music, the Bhatiyali, that wafted across the Podda and Meghna. In my books, Agrarian Bengal and Peasant Labour and Colonial Capital, I had shown how and why the environmental and demographic history from the later 19th century to the 1920s was shaped by colonial interventions by the British. The river system had begun to swing towards the east from the 17th century. The shift gathered momentum in the 19th century as a result of human interference in drainage facilities. The silting up of the rivers, coupled with high mortality due to malaria epidemics, brought about a demographic arrest from the mid-19th century to the 1920s, with a corresponding reduction in the extent of cultivation in West Bengal, though not in the east. The construction of road and railway embankments played havoc with the drainage system of our region. The stagnant waters provided breeding areas for the mosquito, and throughout the later 19th century, a series of malaria epidemics swept across Bardhaman, Birbhum, Hooghly, Howrah, 24 Parganas, Nadia and Jashore.
কলকাতা থেকে নিজস্ব প্রতিনিধির রিপোর্ট এনএম নিউজ।
আরও খবরের আপডেট পেতে সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন আমাদের ইউটিউব চ্যানেলটি আর বেল আইকনে ক্লিক করুন নোটিফিকেশনস পেতে।